Okay, welcome back to FTAG Journal. This is F553, the right to participate in care planning. Table of contents, we're going to do a brief overview, go through the citation history, and tell you just how worried about F553 you need to be. Go through the interpretive guidelines, including what the surveyors are going to ask and what they're going to look for and what they're going to observe. List of actual citations, which is probably the most helpful part of this presentation, and then wrap it up with a summary. So a brief overview. F553 is just about getting the resident's responsible party to participate in the care planning process. There's really two sides to this, two elements of it, and that is what the resident's rights are and then what the facility's responsibility is in terms of getting them to participate in care planning, or at least encouraging them. So the citation history, go through this real quick. In 2018, this was the 106th most frequently cited FTAG, and that was only with 160 across the country. In 2019, looks like a few facilities out there figured it out, dropped a little bit, and majority of these, 73.8, came from the annual survey. As far as scope and severity, there's no harm tags, nothing above F level, and overwhelming majority of them there are D level citations. State distribution, nothing really jumps out to me. Maybe Maryland's going to be up there. That's really the only one that jumps out at me. As far as least cited, 12 states had no F553. As far as the most cited, Alaska. So they got 18 facilities. So if one facility gets this citation, yeah, you're already at above 5%. Maryland was up there. And Washington State, you'll see that they are in the top 5 of a lot of FTAG as far as percentage of facilities. So the interpretive guidelines, let's go through that. Resident has the right to participate in the care planning process, including the development and implementation of the care plan. And within that whole process, also has the right to participate in identifying people and roles that will carry out the care plan. They have the right to request meetings, so that, like with the doctor or any, nurse practitioner, physical therapist, something like that. They also have the right to request revisions to the care plan. And they have the right to participate in establishing treatment goals, which will take us into our next slide, which is dives a little bit deeper into establishing treatment goals. So participating includes establishing expected goals and outcomes, such as the type of treatments, the amount of treatment, the frequency of those treatments, and the duration of those treatments. Resident also has the right to be informed in advance of what the care plan is going to be informed in advance of any potential changes to the care plan. They have a right to receive treatment and services as planned. They have a right to review, and they have a right to sign off on any changes to the care plan before they are actually implemented. So the facility has a responsibility to inform the resident of their right to participate in the care planning process, and they also need to be inclusive. So that doesn't have anything to do with race. Being inclusive means that you need to inform the resident's responsible party, the resident's representative or family as well. And the facility also has the responsibility to provide assessments of the residents' strengths, needs, and find out what their preferences are. And when I say preferences, it means personal and cultural preferences. So what are the surveyors going to look for? Well, first, starting off, the surveyors will attempt to determine if there was an opportunity given to the resident to select or refuse treatments prior to the initiation of treatment. So one little sort of nuanced thing is that it's afforded opportunity versus actual participation. So let's say you couldn't get the resident, like the resident and the responsible party just doesn't want to participate in the care planning. Well, you're not going to get cited if they don't participate in it. But what needs to happen is that it needs to be very well documented that the facility encouraged the resident and or responsible party to participate in the care planning process. So just want to make a note of that. So again, the surveyor is going to determine if the resident and responsible party was supported and encouraged to participate. These surveyors will also try to determine if the facility did offer and provide a convenient time of day for care conferences, and that not only means just the resident, but that also means for the resident's responsible party. Are you not somebody works Monday through Friday and the social services director is only trying to set up care conferences at 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon when the responsible party can't get there? Well, that's not a convenient time, so the facility needs to offer it at a time that the resident's responsible party or family can actually participate. They're going to make sure that the facility provided ample notice, given 2-3 heads up notice of when a care conference would be, and also to make sure that enough time was allowed in the care conference to actually cover the topics that need to be covered. So if it's a 15-minute care conference and they barely get through 10% of what needs to get covered, well, you're not providing enough time. And then the other thing that the facility is, or the surveyor is going to look at the facility to see if they provided a convenient format for the responsible party to participate. So nowadays with video conferencing and all that stuff, was that offered if, say, responsible party or family is a 2-hour drive away and they work late, and you just need to find a time to get it in and they can do video conferencing, or even just regular telephone speakerphone. That would work as well. And the resident has the right to select or refuse treatments, services before the care plan is instituted. However, the regulations do not require the facility to provide any sort of specific medical intervention or any specific treatments that might be requested by the resident, resident's representative, even power of attorney, something like that, if the resident's physician deems that treatment or service to be inappropriate for the resident's medical condition. And then one other little note on this is that a resident whose ability to make decisions about care and treatment, such as being impaired or incompetent, especially if they've been declared incompetent by a court, must, to the extent practicable, be kept informed and consulted on personal preferences, at least to the extent possible. So, surveyors, interviews, record reviews, and observations. So the resident's going to come in. The surveyor is going to come in, and they're going to talk to residents. They're going to talk to staff. And the first thing they're going to do is try to determine the level of participation by the resident and representative in the care planning. They're going to identify how staff includes the resident and responsible party in care planning process. Are care conferences scheduled conveniently? Are the resident and responsible party concerns addressed? Did staff consult with the resident and responsible party prior to any changes in the care plan? How do staff inform the residents or responsible parties of their rights? Was there a risk or benefit discussion for any unsafe requests or decisions? Was an assessment of strengths and weaknesses, and you can throw preferences in there too, was that performed? Preferences followed as far as using the preferences to develop the care plan, was that done? And how does staff respond to nonverbal communication, people with nonverbal communication? How do they communicate with them about their preferences? That kind of stumbled through that one. So basically, how do staff respond to residents that communicate non-verbally about their preferences? Hopefully I clarified that. I may re-record that one because that was awkward. So Potential cross tags. F655. If not, summary of care plan provided to resident and resident representative. So if you don't provide that, especially it's supposed to be the baseline care plan, that needs to be done in the early stages. I forget the exact number of days. It might be like 48 hours or something like that. If you don't provide the resident representative a copy of it, then you can get cited 655. 573, that's if you don't give access to the care plan within 24 hours. Technically, when you go through the other cross tag on that one, F573, it's actually 24 hours if it's a working day, I believe. I don't believe the expectation is that you need the nurses to give them access to any of their medical records, because there is a concern that they may give them access in a way that allows them to have access to other residents' personal information. And the last one is F656, which is all about comprehensive care plans. Let's go through some actual citations. We got some B's, C's, and D's. We got, I think, 2.5 slides of actual citations. So let's get through those. The shower schedule was not followed. Resident responsible party was not invited to a care conference since going on hospice. No evidence of a quarterly care conference. Responsible party was not invited to care conference. Responsible party not informed of changes in treatment, the resident's routine, or pending Legionella labs. No documented restraint release as care planned. No documented weekly wound care measurements, drainage, size, that kind of stuff, smell. No social services directors, so there were no quarterly care conferences getting done. No admission care conference in the record. Incorrect weight led to the physician adding a nutritional supplement, and the responsible party was not notified of weight loss, and the responsible party thought that it could have been corrected without adding the nutritional supplement had they been notified. Responsible party attended care conference, but resident was not invited. Did not honor resident's refusal of an antipsychotic medication, and then the staff hid the medications in beverages and food. Did not honor resident request for change of doctor. Resident was not aware they had a care plan. Insulin DC'd without resident approval. Responsible party approved antipsychotic. Resident refused. And the resident had intact cognition. And the facility went ahead and started giving the resident the antipsychotic, even though the resident didn't want it, just because the responsible party approved. Resident was not invited to care conference because, quote, he has Alzheimer's. Spouse was not invited to care conference. POA was not consulted about resident becoming a long-term care resident. So they initially thought it was just going to be their short-term rehab, and then when they just kind of said, all right, you're going on Medicaid and you're going to be here forever, well, the POA was never consulted, and they had a problem with it. Resident refused fall care plan interventions. Refusals of interventions related to falls were not addressed, so that was actually 2 elements of the same citation. Resident not consulted about using wheelchair and van wheelchair lift to get resident to and from appointments. On that one, the resident was insulted and embarrassed and felt like they were forced into using a wheelchair and van wheelchair lift to transport them. And they were doing it largely for the convenience of the staff, because it did take this particular resident a long time to get places without a wheelchair. No resident responsible party signature on care plan. Resident was not invited to telephone care conference with daughter due to his behaviors. Some more citations. Resident not informed of discussion about his care conference that was held with his daughter. So that last one on the last page, that's what that was about. So they had a care conference about him that he wasn't invited to, and then nobody went and talked to him about what they talked about in the care conference regarding his care. Family canceled last minute for care conference, and the care conference was held without the resident or responsible party. Kind of defeats the purpose of a care conference. Resident concerns were not addressed at care conference. Responsible party not informed of sexual abuse allegations by a family member. Responsible party was not notified of new medications. Resident's desire to discharge home was not discussed in the care conference. No notice of care conference sent to the responsible party. Nursing and dietary were not included in care conference. Typically, nursings take up the majority of it, at least in the early stages. Family informed daughter wished to attend care conference. Daughter was never informed or invited, despite the facility knowing she wanted to be a part of it. The physician increased blood pressure medications, and the responsible party and resident were not consulted prior to increase. Resident was not consulted relating to bathing preferences. POA did not want resident at care conference. Res is cognitively intact. Care conference was held without resident. Responsible party complained of not being informed of changes to care plan or changes in provider, so new physician. Responsible party was not informed that resident had a change in the alert and oriented status, so cognitive status. Res wanted self-medication program and to use his own pharmacy, and it was never discussed in care conference. Resident and responsible party were not included in care planning. There was no written or documented evidence the resident or responsible party were invited to the care conference. Care conference scheduled same time as doctor appointment, never rescheduled. Care conference held to discuss, no care conference held to discuss change of condition. Resident not informed of increased supervision levels. Resident sent to ER day of care conference and it was never rescheduled. Responsible party not informed of post-op care instructions. Resident not aware of insulin dosage increase. No documented evidence of ever informing the resident. Facility did not follow timeline policy for a care conference. So in that case, they didn't have a care conference in the first 72 hours after admission as the policy stated they should. Responsible party was not notified of resident sharing a room with opposite sex. Both of them were cognitively intact. Both the residents wanted to do it. Evidently, you can cite it if the responsible party is not notified. A couple more citations, Z-level. Care conference only held when responsible party accepted the invitation. Several missed care conferences due to dialysis, and they were not rescheduled. Resident complained of not having input related to her care, and there was no care conference documentation on record. And resident not aware that they had ever had a care conference about him, and he had been in the facility for 2 years. So, summary. Most of these citations are because care conferences were never held. We went through a lot of examples, specific citations, but I mean the number of them that just say, I'd go through my list and maybe I'll put pictures of my list that I have, but went through hundreds of these citations, and really, the majority of them are just no quarterly care conference, no admission care conference, that kind of stuff. So, the other one is biggest reason for getting this citation is that there was no documentation of the resident or responsible party ever being notified or consulted about any changes in the care plan. So those are the two biggest reasons that facilities get cited F553. So. That is F-Tag Journal F553.